Go. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV with your host, Ellicott. Today, we're going to be having a fun discussion about blockchain and decentralized finance. What's happening? What's not happening? What is all that is going on in this energetic industry where things continue to shift and shape on a millisecond basis? We had the Bitcoin birthday yesterday, October 31st. We also had a bunch of new venture funds launch today and yesterday. Plus, we had new ecosystem funds and non-fungible tokens left and right, new marketplaces. Everything seems to be happening in this industry, but let's get down into the nitty-gritty. Before we introduce our guest today, a big thank you to the LaToken team, to Hasmik and Maria for making today's episode possible. Again, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Welcome, Gary. It's a pleasure to have both you and David today. Gary, a quick introduction for everybody, and then we'll come to you next, David.
Yeah, sure. Great to be here, Kyle. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur investor. Love artificial intelligence, blockchain, quantum computing, because they are the future. I've built 17 companies involved in 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai. I've written now 165, going 166 articles. Actually, my next article that I wrote a month ago is about doing business in the metaverse in Forbes. So lo and behold, Facebook announces. So it's fantastic timing and great to be here. So
absolutely. Speaking of Facebook, for those who may not have been aware, Facebook rebranded as Meta, META, and decided to also put $10 billion with a big capital B towards their new Meta division and being the leading voice, platform, and infrastructure for the metaverses of the future as well. To be determined on how that's going to roll out, but that was the big headline, as Gary noted too. David, welcome as well. A little intro background for everybody.
Sure. Good to see you, Kyle. Good to see you, Gary. And I'm David Tawil. I'm the president of ProChain Capital. ProChain is a hedge fund that is focused on the crypto space. We invest in tokens, both long and short. We invest in equities of companies that are involved in crypto activity, crypto investment, digital payments. And we also have some investments in venture stage companies. As a matter of fact, interesting article on CNBC today about a small town north of Austin, Texas, where there is a lot of mining going on, where we've got at least one, if not maybe 2, investments that are involved in that in that area.
Well, and David, you teed it up perfectly. Since yesterday was Bitcoin's birthday, the 13th, I believe, birthday of an anniversary of the publishing of the white paper initially. David, talk to us about what's happening in Texas. We've got some new mining activity, some mining companies. Give us a little insight of what's happening there, especially now as we're looking at this future of decentralized finance, where anybody can start getting into mining more easily than ever today.
Right. So, we were, I'd say, early interested party in mining generally. It's not there's a couple parts of the business. Certainly, it's finding a cheap power source. And in this day and age, if your power source is non-carbon emitting, even better, because you'll get some additional backing, at least in sentiment, if not in dollars, from some different places. And then there is getting the equipment and updating the equipment. And then lastly, trading the Bitcoin that you mine. And so those are the couple of different, I'd say, aspects of the business. And we have been talking to various types of miners that are out there that have been getting power from different sources. So we are involved, in what's going on in Rockdale, Texas, but there it happens to be just a cheap power contract. But then we're also involved in some net zero activities. As a matter of fact, we were talking last week with a company not in the United States that is capturing what would be flared gas to go ahead and power Bitcoin mining machinery. And so, again, at the end of the day, to me, the decentralization is beautiful. It's incredible. It is so, I'd say, apropos of the sharing economy that we're in. If you can get rigs together and go ahead and strap them to something that is, far out in the boonies, so to say, and that energy source would necessarily be wasted, even better, and go ahead and capture it and power what is this decentralized universe. To me, that's incredible. I think that nobody should have any objection to that. As a matter of fact, we should be supporting that. We don't need to pay very high wages for people living in very, congested cities. The machines will do it without the humans, and frankly, they will do it in far-flung places, and they will do it with things that people generally would have otherwise considered to be waste.
Absolutely. And Gary, I want to come to you next. You talked about the metaverse and Meta, Facebook's rebranding in your opening today. This morning, we have the announcement of a couple new funds, all focused on metaverses, the NFT infrastructure that may be powering. And we saw about 100 to another $200+ million put out there in the world. What is the impact that blockchain and this future of metaverses will have once combined together and on our lives?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I just had a conversation before this with some folks from Cambridge, and this is that revolutionary change that's taking place, Kyle. And so what is it going to look like? I mean, one of the discussions we had is, as we go down through the metaverse and tokenize our data, what happens about somebody that's from an area where their own personal data isn't worth that much? Are we really democratizing opportunities or making it worse? What happens when there's life after Google, right? When we have to now pay to be able to do search. And so there are a lot of questions coming up, but the net is what we're dealing with is a massive, massive amount of data. We're looking at a new way of being able to do business together, to trade things of value that we've never been able to trade before, to get, and data is one of them. And how does it play? Blockchain plays to be able to make it much more secure than it is today. And we're just in exploratory stages. There's a lot that's going to happen. My article in Forbes, one of them is doing business in the metaverse. The next one is, what is life? How will your life be affected? What will your life look like in the metaverse? And so we are going through some transformational changes, but we got to look at what kind of impact it's going to have on everybody in terms of democratization of opportunity. So I'm really literally in the thick of that today. So my next article that is going to come out is, how is it going to impact it? What's it going to do for us? How is it going to make our lives better or not? Is it going to be fair? Because if you got a person that's a high net worth individual and they're, in just my opinion, and their data, you may value that more. Is it fair? How's that going to really allow us to open up opportunities in different parts of Africa? Tomorrow, my partner's in Ethiopia, right? Not a lot of people spend a lot of time down in Ethiopia building opportunities, but we believe there's bright lights and opportunities there. And we see the change taking place. So I just spoke at the United Nations as technology is a tool for peace. And I believe this idea of the metaverse could be tooled in the right way, as long as it's not politicized.
David, any thoughts to add on to that? Metaverse and blockchain coming together, what an impact look like?
So Gary is a generation out from where I am. And I don't say that to evoke laughter. As the type of investor that I am versus the type of investor that Gary is, we focus on very different things. With Gary, you're likely to make 100x return, at some point in the future, from an idea that does not translate to but a very, very, very small portion of people, probably, number of people that you organize inside of an auditorium in the world. My fund is much more, I wouldn't say here and now focused, but certainly shorter timeline, and sooner realization and monetization of investments. So I am not involved in any way, shape, or form as an investment strategy in the metaverse. I don't expect that there's going to be a huge amount of time between now and when, our fund will be, but because the velocity of the world, I think, is ever increasing. But nevertheless, it is, a fair amount of time before our fund gets there. So we're primarily focused on blockchain, and we've spoken in the past where Gary has raised the issue of quantum computing, as it relates to the sustainability or the invincibility of the blockchain. And to me, those are incredibly important points. They are points that, in a way, I can appreciate in the abstract, but certainly Gary understands in the concrete, and he's focused, very correctly, based on his brilliance, where those two vectors come, into contact with each other. I am not there. I am further or much earlier on in the timeline than where those activities are happening that Gary's focused on.
Understood. Let's switch it up then to something that you are focused on very heavily. So blockchain and decentralized finance. As I mentioned earlier today, breaking down kind of the headlines of the industry, Ava and the Ava Foundation or Ava Labs put out another $220 million fund in addition to their $380 million fund. So almost $600 million focused on decentralized finance investments and incentives in that particular blockchain ecosystem. We've got Near that also just launched $800 million. Solana seeing also triple digits, and other blockchains seeing the same. A lot of that core focus is decentralized finance, in addition to building up their protocol networks. What are you seeing, David, around this, and what is the impact of that kind of capital going in? Because some of these do not have mandates in terms of their 10-year horizon traditionally for a fund, or 12, 15 years. This is just money to go now, and it continues to compound very quickly. What are you seeing, or what is this impact around DeFi?
So let me address this from a couple of perspectives. You have to address it from a historical perspective, also from a capital deployment perspective, alternatives in terms of choices for capital deployment, and I think where we think reality is going to settle. So let me unpack that a little bit. Last year was an absolutely incredible, mind-blowing, highest ever return year for college endowments, and I'm sure it's probably the same for pension funds and foundations as well, that invested in similar ways to some of these incredible returning endowments invested. And what I'm talking about is, we've seen numbers from the likes of Duke and from Yale, George Washington, that were able to notch 50 to 60% returns on their endowment portfolios for the year. That's astounding. I mean, if you served up that type of projected return to any investor on a portfolio, they would tell you you're crazy and you really need to go and check your sanity. The fact that everybody was able to produce those types of returns last year, laggards produced 30+% in the endowment world. It was all due to venture capital. That's what really, fired those returns. Everything else lagged: equities, debt, even private equity. So that's the flavor of the day. Whether it's right or wrong, it is the flavor. If it is the flavor, I think by definition, we have to assume that the flavor eventually wears off. Certainly the billions upon billions of dollars that is currently being raised and being deployed, and like you said, some of it without mandate, which is crazy. I don't know what I'm investing in, but I'm giving it to some manager that has a previous track record, and has some good thoughts to throw out. Eventually a lot of that capital should go not the right way. Let's put it that way. It can't all win. That said, the alternatives right now in terms of deploying capital with, an incredible upside return, there aren't very many. Our debt investments, around the world yield zero. Equities, but for tech, don't really, produce anywhere near the like of returns as these venture funds could and have in recent years. And even private equity, if they're focused on value-driven businesses, they also can't make those types of returns. So it's no surprise that there's a ton of money coming in. In addition, to give some credence to the sector, the amount of development that's really going on, substantive development that's going on, is enormous. We all have to agree with that. So it's not like money's being thrown down a pit where everyone's chasing the exact same prize. No, there are a lot of different, activities and enterprises that are being thought of and launched each and every day. Do I agree, on the other hand, with some of the pronouncements that have been made, even by regulators, that hundreds, if not thousands, of tokens that currently exist will eventually go ahead and fade away? Yeah, that is the case. And so you've got to be an active person, an active investor in the space. You certainly can't be passive. I think that's crazy, because so much changes each day, and a certain enterprise or a certain actor, being in the lead one day doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be in the lead, a week or two later. I mean, we've seen flip-flops between, simply the gains of Bitcoin versus Ethereum, and those are two totally different animals. But nevertheless, you've got to watch, kind of where the tide is and also where the fundamentals are. So I know it's a really long answer, but I had to, put all that in there, so that people can have, real perspective.
It's a good answer. There's a lot of complexities to this industry, and I think you're calling it out correctly. And Gary, a question for you: AI. Where do you see artificial intelligence role in decentralized finance, either now or in the coming future, as this industry starts to heat up even further than what we've seen over the past year?
Yeah, so let me just address one thing, Kyle. So what I write about, and I talk about the metaverse, I talk about quantum computing. What I'm trying to do is I want to paint a picture of what the future is going to look like. And of course, there are some parts of my portfolio where it's a bit more risky and looking at the future. But at the same time, we're looking at what technologies, what companies today are going to make a dent, and how can we help them? And we do that through our accelerator and through our venture studio. So that's really where we are, whether it's blockchain, DeFi, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, et cetera. But ones that have real revenue, ones that are really growing. So in terms of artificial intelligence, I mean, as we move down through DeFi, we got to look at the security. We got to look at how to be able to plug the holes before there are potential attacks. And as I've said, as David said, rightly so, the concern about quantum computers by 2022, between 2022 and 2027, being able to crack Bitcoin, for instance, having those capabilities. I mean, when you get a system, it's 158 million times faster than the fastest supercomputer today, and it's able to do what would take 10,000 years in 200 seconds. You've got to take a look at how can we protect against it. So these incredible technologies are going to help us become more secure, are going to help us to be able to do things a lot faster, are going to help us to do things more personalized, are going to help us to do things in different ways. And I believe to be able to democratize the opportunity for all of us. As you know, we spend a lot of time in Africa, and I really believe that, and this was my presentation at the United Nations a few weeks ago, that we need to use these technologies as a tool for peace to democratize the opportunities. And that's what DeFi does, from my opinion. AI is just going to help push it along in all kinds of different ways to make smart contracts a lot smarter, to help make things more secure, and to help us to be able to deal with the massive amounts of data that's around us.
I like it. And David, I want to come to you for closing thoughts as we come to wrap here. Where do things go in the next 6 months? We're 2 months out to the end of the year. Looking into that Q2 start, which is mind blowing, but looking into that Q2 start of 2022, what do you think is going to happen between blockchain and decentralized finance over these next 6 months as thing continues to heat up? And then, of course, where can everyone find you in ProChain Capital?
Sure. So two things, and we'll talk about this hopefully on an upcoming show. I think it's always a relevant topic. I think last year, throughout the year and early this year, we spoke a lot about regulation. In the DeFi space, it is incredibly important. And the regulators are clearly, going to the things that are easiest first, which are stable coins in terms of what backs them, which is to me is a layup. But then in terms of activities as opposed to assets like lending, leveraging, and so on, there's going to be a lot of I'd say regulatory and legal pronouncements. I think that's really one of the most important spaces to watch, simply because those headlines really drive prices, at least on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. I wouldn't say months and years term, but on that type of time frame, I think it's important to watch. The other thing that is important to watch, that I'd also like to talk about on a future show, and I'm not the expert, but I would love to be part of the panel, is gaming tokens. What's happened with Axie Infinity, Central Land, and other types of tokens that are trying to be a lot of different things at once, and who the community of token holders and users are, is incredibly interesting to me. And then we have to at some point talk about the world coin, which I think is also scary beyond just being exciting. So those are my thoughts, and hopefully we'll touch on those in the future. My name, you can reach me best on Twitter at David D. Tawil, and also on LinkedIn. It's very easy to find me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. We'll definitely talk about WorldCoin next week, if not this week, here on VCTV. So stay tuned, everybody, on that. Also, we're going to follow up on the ETFs. I'm going to extend our over/under predictions for an extra week.
Oh yeah,
a little bit more time.
I got killed.
You did.
I'm sorry.
You did. You did, but it's okay. I'm going to go into mid-November. So we'll go to November 15th. Plus or minus on that, and we'll come back for the audience. Gary, closing thoughts as well, your prediction for the next 6 months, and then where everyone can find you as well. Oh, Gary, it looks like we have you on a technical difficulty there.
Yep,
Muted. There we go.
These are, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah, so now these are exciting times, Kyle, and as data is the new electricity with artificial intelligence. It's a fuel. AI is the new electricity. There's incredible opportunities out there. We need to make sure that, as we combine blockchain and artificial intelligence, make these smarter, faster tools to be able to make sure that the smart contracts, are intelligent. I'm looking at that. I'm excited about it. We also have to look at how we can democratize these opportunities around the world. And I'm not saying this in terms of, that this is about entitlement. I say that this is about opportunity, because we are fundamentally changing. You just talked about the world coin. I mean, think about the political ramifications of that, but it's going to happen. So you can reach me, Gary Fowler, on LinkedIn. You can see me on Twitter. I'm the CEO, president, co-founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios. So love to hear from you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Gary, David, thank you both very much. To our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, like, share, and subscribe to today's episode. Also, thank you to LaToken team, to Hasmik and Maria for making today's episode possible. We would all love to hear from you and learn more about what you may be building in this space or investing in as well. Please do reach out to all three of us here, Gary, David, and myself. But when you do, make sure you add context, where you heard us, where you met us, and what you would like to continue the conversation about. With that, everyone have a wonderful day. We'll see you back here tomorrow for more VCTV. Until then, I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.